Coming up on today's Locked On Dodgers, finally a day off for the team and for us a little bit. But we asked for some questions, and you guys brought the questions. So that's what we're going to do today. It's a mailbag episode, so keep it locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. This is Locked On Dodgers, and we want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day every day. Remember, we are free and available wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. Make it easy on yourself and subscribe in all those places, and you'll never miss a day because we're not going to. If this is your first time listening or watching, I'm Vince Samperio. I will be rolling a solo dolo today as my co-host, Joe Snider. I let him take the day off since he covered me when I went on vacation a couple weeks ago. So I will be answering questions. I am a lifelong Dodger fan, just like you guys, and so is Jeff. We've also spent some time in the locker room in the press box, but we're not quite insiders. But we're still here to bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every single weekday morning. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. And let's talk Dodgers. No news from the Dodgers world. They start a series in Philadelphia tonight. But with that being said, we put out a call for questions, and we got a lot of good questions. Way too many for this episode, so we will save some for next week. Some that are maybe more tailored towards Jeff's strong suits of answering questions. But that's all today's episode is going to be, and let's hop right into it. The first one comes from Sal Hernandez at Sal Hernandez01. He says, looking at the Dodger performance and injuries so far, what are best guesses at possible holes to fill and players to pursue at the trade deadline? And yeah, this one's interesting because what do the Dodgers need? I know, they're sitting on top of the NL West right now. They're sitting with one of the best records in all of baseball. We've talked about how they haven't quite clicked yet, but they're starting to get the wheels turning a little bit better recently, at least offensively. I mean, you're sitting here and look at it and you think about starting pitching, and that was something that we talked about before the season of what they might address at the trade deadline. I don't think that's changed, especially knowing with the injuries, Kershaw and Heaney are now on the injured list, and Walker Buehler hasn't been quite as effective. Julio Diaz hasn't been quite as effective. He's had, a couple games where things got out of hand. So you got to imagine starting pitching now. What is out there in the starting pitching market? I know, Frankie Montas, somebody that we talked about in the offseason. You got Luis Castillo, who's not having the best season in Cincy. Maybe the Dodgers could rescue him. I there's a lot of teams that are still. I mean, even the Reds, who were downright awful, they won 7 of their last 10. They might have aspirations of a 7th seed in the playoff spot. So, it's a matter of these next 2 months are going to tell a lot, obviously, about what teams are going to be trading and who's going to be available. I think the Dodgers' first thing is starting pitching. I do think that's really what they need to go after, whether it's one viable ace. I think, that's the other part too, is the Dodgers want quality or quantity, because realistically they could throw Ryan Pepio, Michael Grove, Andre Jackson, Mitch White out there every 5th, 6th day and get some lower, maybe a little bit lower quality, but you know, probably 4, 5, 6 innings, 6 on a good day, 4 or 5 innings of 2 to 3 runs allowed, and they, with this offense, they could be happy with that. So, I think it's something where they need to get somebody that's going to slot in the top 2 spots of the rotation. It's going to be either above Walker Buehler or right behind Walker Buehler, and It's just a matter of if that's going to be available. And we'll get into a question later about Dustin May, and that could answer this question as well. But I think it's starting pitching. I think even with the way the bullpen has performed, I do think it's a matter of what's going to happen to Blake Trinan. If Blake Trinan is out, I do think they need to go after a top tier reliever. Craig Kimbrell's got save opportunities, but you don't necessarily have that person that can come in and get you strikeouts or get you, guaranteed outs with big situations. Bruce Dargado, we talked about the other day, doesn't quite have the strikeout stuff. Alex Vesia hasn't quite been what he's been last year. He's been pretty good, but not quite what he's been last year. They don't have that guy that's like lights out, Blake Trinan type stuff. Obviously, that's hard to find. Daniel Hudson could be that guy, but do you want to trust Daniel Hudson? I don't know. So I think pitching is the first and foremost of what they need to address. And then offensively, it just comes down to health pretty much. I mean, and how they feel about Max Muncy at that point when it comes to the trade deadline. If Max Muncy or Justin Turner or even Cody Bellinger are struggling that bad offensively still, then it's a matter of, okay, do we need to make a move for somebody? It doesn't necessarily have to be somebody at one of the, at a specific spot. Just has to be somebody that plays at least one of those spots because they can fill in and everyone else can move around. But I can't see them going offense right now. It's very possible, especially if somebody gets hurt. But I do think it's pitching, and then if somebody's still in major slumps, maybe they think about addressing the offense. But even then, you got with Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Trey Turner, those three at the top of the order, you should be scoring some runs regardless of who else is behind them. And the Dodgers don't have any slouches behind them, so they can still get it done. That's a good question. Let's move on to the next question. Let's get right into that question. So we got one from Rich M at the Straw 44. Does Dustin May make an immediate impact upon return, or do they solidify the pen? Michael Pacheco at 24M Pacheco. Will Dustin May be stretched out as a starter, or will he remain in the bullpen for the remainder of the season when he returns? I think those were the only ones we got about Dustin May. So when it comes to Dustin May, my initial thoughts were he's going to be a bullpen piece. And he could, that question we just talked about, where I said they need a starting pitcher that can slot in behind Walker Buehler or a reliever that can fill in for Blake Trinan. Dustin May could, in theory, assuming he comes back how he was from before the surgery, could fill both of those roles. Obviously, not at the same time. It's just a matter of what the Dodgers need by the time he's healthy. I think they could stretch him out to a starter. And here's where it kind of, in the playoffs, we've seen you don't need starters to go 6, 7 innings. You kind of really need him to go 2 times through a lineup, 4 or 5 innings, and then hand it off to the bullpen. And if they can build Dustin May up to that, yeah, he's a number 2 or number 3 in your playoff rotation. And if Andrew Heaney and Clayton Kershaw are still hurt by the time, or maybe not, Andrew Heaney's not as effective, or whatever the case, by the time you get to the point where Dustin May's back, you think, hey, maybe we need to stretch him out because we do need a guy that can give us 2.5 times through a lineup, 2 to 3 times through a lineup. If those guys are back and they're pitching well and they remain healthy, then you're thinking, okay, maybe we need that bullpen arm. Blake Trinan's not going to come back. Maybe Blake Trinan doesn't come back. Like, okay, maybe we need this bullpen arm that has, nasty, filthy stuff that plays up in a 1 to 2 inning spurt, and we go about it that way. So I don't think there's a definitive answer right now. I do think it's a matter of what they need at the time when he's coming back. I do think that they will build him up like a starter when he does start, throwing more bullpens and building his arm back up. And then, it's a matter of they build him back up as a starter because by the time he's back, he'll be like beginning of spring training where he would be into 2 or 3 inning mode anyways. And then if they need him as a reliever, they'll keep him in 2 to 3 inning mode. If they need him as a starter, they'll build him up, maybe take a little bit longer on like a rehab assignment until he can throw up to like 75 pitches and then get him in there and see where he's at. So, yeah, I personally think he'll end up being a reliever. I think the starting pitching will get healthy and or they'll make a trade. and they'll keep Dustin May in the pen, similar to how we saw Julio in 2018, coming out of the pen. But like I said, they could need a starter, or they could just say, hey, we want to build you up to 75, 80 pitches, and we'll decide how we want to use you at that point, and we will just want you to get some innings. So, not cop out answer. I think personally it'll be reliever over starter, but if they need a starter, then it'll be a starter, and that's how it goes. We're gonna answer some more questions, or I'm gonna answer some more questions. First, talk about Built Bar brownie batter puffs. I love brownies. I know you love brownies. What's the best part about brownies? The brownie batter, because you get to eat some before they're even made. And sometimes, you just want to eat the batter before you even make the brownies. And what if you could do that, but it was not that bad for you? Well, Built has a new creation, better than all the other ones before. The brownie batter puff. Yes, that's a brownie batter puff. It's a protein puff. They're available right now on built.com. They're delicious, flavored marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate, and it's brownie batter flavored. 140 calories, 17 grams of protein, 7 grams of sugar. Everything you could want about gets anything good about it without all the bad stuff. It's everything you need right there in your life. Go to built.com, get some brownie batter puffs right now. They're not going to be there that long. It's a limited time flavor. Go check it out. Built.com, promo code LOCK15, get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day every day. And check out Locked On Now podcast for another listen of your day. Recaps of MLB games with analysis from our local experts. Sometimes that's Jeff Snider. Taking fans through the season like no other network, the Locked On Podcast Network and the Locked On Now podcast is just what you need. Free and available wherever you get podcasts. All right, back and let's answer more questions. This question, real quick, comes from Marco at Marco LAHXC. He says, "What's the best website to buy tickets for the games?" This actually is a perfect question for me. Jeff has season tickets, so he doesn't ever really have to look. But I do not have season tickets, and I do like to look and see. And honestly, this is going to be an answer that you might not want to hear, but it's a matter of you need to do some research, and it depends how deep you want to get or if you care. If you care about like maximizing the money you spend and where you want to sit, then I'm going to give you a list of websites you want to run through. If you don't want to do that, Dodgers.com, TickPick, those are the two I would say. And normally that would be my answer. TickPick, Dodgers.com. If TickPick's lower than Dodgers.com, then TickPick it is. TickPick does not have fees, and they are one that I like to use. But what I've seen this year is I've bought tickets to games from a few different places already. I've bought from Dodgers.com. I've bought from TickPick. I've actually bought from StubHub. I almost bought from Game Time. So if you are looking at tickets and you have a little time and you want to do that research, I would say check out Dodgers.com, see what the face value is. And then you go to TickPick because they don't have fees and see what those are at. And then you go to StubHub. And when you're searching, make sure to put searching with fees already because you don't want to be looking at tickets that you think, oh, they're $50 and then they're actually $70 or whatever. So StubHub. And then check out Game Time, but look at the all-in prices so you don't, like you said. I don't understand the people that search for tickets without the fees already added to it. And then they're like, oh yeah, I got tickets for this much. And then it's really like $20, $30 more later. So those are the four I would recommend in that order. Just, you got to see what the face value is going for. You got to go to the one without fees, and then you go search for two more that are pretty good, but search with fees because they get you. If Jeff was on here, he would say himself as the best website to buy tickets. So if you want to sit on field level and Jeff gives pretty good prices, yeah, check out Jeff. Hit him up on Twitter. Hit him with DM, and you can see where you're at there. So that's the answer to that question. The next question is from Philip at Regular Barnett. He says, when will they being the Dodgers, finally be bad again? And yeah, Phil is a Giants fan, so he has a different stake in this answer. And it's hard to say. I mean, by bad, like when are they going to be under 500 again? I don't see that happening for the significant future. Just the way the team's built, the way Andrew Friedman in the front office, and the way the ownership is built. They wouldn't really allow it. It would take like a catastrophic season for them to finish under 500, where like everybody gets hurt and they just end up punting on the season because they don't really have a chance, or they end up like fighting for the seventh seed or whatever the case is. Now, in terms of without catastrophic seasons, I do think it's going to be a while before the Dodgers are bad. But however, if worst case scenario, that could happen here in the next 3 to 4 years. Let's just say Walker Buehler ends up leaving, Julio Diaz ends up leaving. And I know Ryan Pepio never figures out the command issue, and can be that guy that you thought he might be. And Dustin May never fully recovers from Tommy John surgery, never the guy that you is, and Tony Gonsolin never masters efficiency. And then you got Trey Turner, and you end up he walks. And then there's a season maybe where Mookie Betts is hurt, and there's a season where Freddie Freeman is still good, but he's a good guy on a not so great team. And then you got Cody Bellinger, either one never figures it out again offensively, two ends up leaving. The guys that come up the next wave, Michael Bush, Miguel Vargas, Diego Cartaya, those guys aren't good or don't pan out. Or let's just say the Dodgers go in one season and trade a couple of those guys, and then they never replenish the next couple drafts. They don't replenish. They don't draft guys that are good enough. They have a Jaron Kendall type who still has potential, but hasn't quite reached that potential. And if all that happened, I could see them being under 500 in 3 to 4 years. But realistically, that's not all going to happen. The Dodgers will continue to develop good players, and they will continue to be good for the significant future, at least the next 5+ years. The thing is, though, that doesn't necessarily mean that the rest of the NL West is going to stay, bad or irrelevant. So they will have more battles for the NL West, I would say. I just don't think they're going to be bad. Bad being under 500 for a long time, unless, like I mentioned, one catastrophic season of a bunch of injuries or a mass exodus in the next 2 to 3 years that ends up leaving them hurt in the next 3 to 4 years. So that's what my answer is there. But hopefully we don't ever have to experience that again. But realistically, there might be one day where the Dodgers are under 500 again. I just hope it's not anytime soon, and hopefully not ever. All right, let's go to Kevin at Blue Goon 82. He had a few questions, but we'll take this one first. Cody Bellinger may never be more than what he is now, a glove first center fielder. He's due to make a lot in arbitration. What do you think the long-term plan is for center field? James Outman, question mark. Gavin Lux, positional change, question mark. A trade, question mark. I do think, this is a kind of a make or break year for Cody Bellinger, and it's tough. Do I think, even if Cody Bellinger continues, let's just say he stays on this pace, around right under 700 OPS or around 700 OPS. Let's just say he's Gold Glove, top three at least in center field, and that's what he is. And he's probably still going to be due around 20 million or so next year. The Dodgers paid 20 million for that. They will have money coming off the books. If the Trevor Bauer money stays off the books, and then, in theory, Kershaw's salary comes off the books, a couple other salaries. But, it doesn't really come down to that. The Dodgers are going to pay if somebody's good enough. It's a matter of, do they think Cody Bellinger brings them that value at, let's just say, 20 plus million, if he's what he is right now. And the answer might be no. And it would be really wild for former Rookie of the Year and National League MVP to be non-tendered, but it's very much in the realm of possibility. I don't think that will happen. I still think that I still think around 20 mil, they'll bring him back for one last year and try to figure it out. But it's also a matter of, okay, if he stays this whole year healthy, still doesn't figure it out, maybe they find a way to, it's hard to trade because nobody wants to pay 20 million for a guy that is not performing at the plate. You don't see a lot of defense first guys get $20 million a year. So I personally think, and I will believe in Cody Bellinger for the time being. If that's not it, I don't think they have the internal option for, well, scratch that. I think they have internal options for center field, but they would have to bring in somebody from another way. Chris Taylor could be your everyday center fielder, and he's signed for the next 3 years beyond this season. You know, James Outman, he's had a nice jump in the last couple of years in terms of becoming a fringe guy to a actual prospect. I don't think he has enough to be an everyday center fielder. Gavin Lux is a matter of, yeah, you might need Gavin Lux in center field, but you also might need him at shortstop, and you also might need him at second base. Now, realistically, the Dodgers have probably second baseman enough. So let's just say Trey Turner leaves. You do need Lux at short or center. Um, but also he hasn't been hitting. So you're filling the hole at the same size peg in that point. If you're bringing a guy that isn't hitting that great and doesn't have as great defense, you're actually probably a little bit less a smaller peg than it was before. So I think it would come from trade or free agent signing. I don't have free agents off the top of my head that are ready. One of the guys that we might talk about, Juan Soto, could in theory help out, and then people move around him. But as of right now, I'm believing in Cody Bellinger. One, number two, I think it comes from a trade. I don't think they have anyone or trust anyone in this operation to man center field on an everyday basis. Whether it's and then three, Chris Taylor becomes everyday center fielder, and they fill in around him. So those are the three options I have. More questions coming, more answers coming. First, talking about BetOnline, because BetOnline.net is where you need to go. It's your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. They got all the odds, they got all the news, all the sports developments, all the podcasts, all the Locked On podcasts. Check it out there. Everything you need. They got all the scores. Whatever you need in the world of sports, BetOnline.net has you covered, including basketball playoffs, MLB scores, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline.net is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to esports and more. So head to betonline.net, your laptop or mobile device today. Check it out. Check out all the trends. Check out all the action. They got a lot on there. You can find yourself getting lost for a day. So go over there, betonline.net, and check it out. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, we got time for a couple more questions. We got one from Jerry at Jerry_J_Via. He says, will we see Lamb or Pilar at any point this season? I would say yes. I would not commit to saying yes to both. I will commit to saying yes to, we'll see one of them. Um, and just based on kind of the Dodgers' needs, I would say that's Kevin Pillar over Jake Lamb. Currently, with Max Muncy, Justin Turner, Edwin Rios, Hanser Alberto, they have a lot of infielders, especially guys that can play the corners. Gavin Lux, I guess, could play third base. Not really, but they don't necessarily have all the outfielders. They have Chris Taylor and Gavin Lux and Cody Bellinger and Mookie Betts and then move on. So I do think we'll see at least one of those two guys. I do think it would be Kevin Pillar. He is, doing very good down there. I guess that would be the one skeptic I do have of why we won't see them is that, or the other reason of why I think it's Kevin Pillar is he came to the Dodgers organization because he said he still believes there was, something he could unlock still, even in his older baseball age, not older in regular times. There's still something that he could unlock, and that the Dodgers are good at unlocking that. So he trusts the Dodgers. He trusts the Dodgers format, system, everything else. Um, Whereas Jake Lamb probably did that too, but also probably came over because he trusts the Dodgers, but also in order to get back to the majors. Kevin Pillar, I think, would be a little more committed to staying in the minors longer than Jake Lamb. I would imagine both of these guys have some kind of out in their contract to where they can leave after a certain date. And I do think Jake Lamb would leave before Kevin Pillar. And when you go down to the numbers, I mean, they're similar numbers. Kevin Pillar's OPS is 1.069, Jake Lamb 908. Kevin Pillar, 9 homers, 5 doubles, 3 triples, 33 RBIs, only 15 strikeouts, and 115 plate appearances. Jake Lamb has a little bit more strikeouts, 35 strikeouts and 128 at bats, but does have 10 home runs, 28 RBIs. They both walking at a pretty decent clip, uh, decent enough. Jake Lamb, though, is interesting. He has 10 home runs, he has 3 doubles, no triples, and that's it. So he has 13 extra base hits, and he has 23 singles. So it's a little bit different type of guy there. But yeah, if I had to pick one, Kevin Pillar, and that's because I think he'll stick around longer in the organization. I do want to note there's a lot of questions about Juan Soto and a trade package or putting together a trade package. We'll save that for when Jeff is back, um, just because I'm sure he has an answer too, and that'd be fun to see what he thinks. Next question is from Vegas. I remember the 702. He says, "Who was on the trading block?" David Price. David Price is on the trading block, and other than that, I don't think anyone else is on the trading block because the Dodgers are a team that has their pieces in place and would be adding rather than subtracting when it comes down to it. But David Price is the one guy that they would like to find a better spot for him and for helping clear out a little bit of a clutter they have on the roster. So David Price is on the trading block. We got one other question from Kevin at Blue Goon 82. Because Ryan Pepiot and Michael Grover up earlier than many predicted. Clayton Kershaw and Andrew Heaney have questionable health. How can the Dodgers improve the rotation? I know Bauer, but yeah, I don't think there's no reason to count on Bauer anyways. Uh, but yeah, how can you improve the rotation? Well, health is first way. Clayton Kershaw and Andrew Heaney being healthy and both pitching the way they were before injury. That would be the biggest boost to the starting rotation. And the other part of it is Tony Gonsolin remaining and doing what he's been doing. Because even, Walker Buehler's, let's just say half a step down from where he was last year. Julio's still figuring things out. Tony Gonsolin can be that guy. Then, that's not a bad at your top of your rotation. Tyler Anderson's the guy who's going to come out and give you 5-6 innings every time out. Sometimes not as great, sometimes great. Last game he gave us 7 strong innings. So he's a guy that does that. Like I mentioned earlier, if health doesn't come back or guys are still kind of wavering, Dustin May could be stretched out. But that's not until like August. So, trade deadline guys would come in August. The trade deadline's August 2nd this year, but that's a little not a pipe dream, but a little bit more, down the road type of thing. How would you improve the rotation? Well, you make a trade. And, the Dodgers have a top tier farm system. I don't think, before the season, I thought Gavin Lux was on the table in terms of a trade to help you get a starting pitcher. I don't think that would be the case now just because he is part of the Dodgers everyday lineup and roster, even if he doesn't perform quite how, we would want him to. But I don't think they would take from the major league team in order to improve the major league team because you're taking from one peg or taking from one hole and adding to another hole. So all that being said, I think it's a trade. I don't know who yet. Names I mentioned earlier: Montez Castillo, Molly from the Reds. But you gotta see who. There's guys on one year deals probably that you can look at, or guys on the last year of their deal. There's guys. That's usually who the Dodgers go after. I don't think there's going to be any big names like that are not on contending teams already. So it's let it play out. It's May 20th. The trade deadline's August 2nd. There will be at least one or two teams that fall out of a playoff race to have a good starting pitcher at that point that they might be willing to part with. So I think it's via trade. But I do think the best way is health. You get Kershaw and Heaney back. Now you're looking at Buehler, Julio, Kershaw, Heaney, Gonsolin, Tyler Anderson. You got six starters. You can figure it out how they want to do it. And if and Julio or Walker aren't quite figured out, maybe they take an IL stint to work on some things and get back strong. So that's where I think we're at. Um, and look at that. We are at 30 minutes. There's still a handful of questions, but we'll save those for next week. We'll sprinkle them in throughout the episodes. We got the Juan Soto one from like three different people, and then we got a few other ones that are good questions. So thank you for all the questions. Really appreciate it. Makes life a lot easier for us to have all these questions answered instead of trying to think about what we want to talk about. So appreciate you guys. Thank you all for listening. Thanks for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day every day. Make sure to check out Locked On MLB for another listen in your day with Paul Francis Sullivan, aka Sully. Brings you a unique perspective on the major leagues past and present. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. You can send us an email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, if you want to get a hold of us. Jeff, or missed me and Jeff's Twitter. Jeff is at Snydog. I'm at Vince Samperio. DMs are open on those accounts if you need to get a hold of us. You got the email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com. Voicemails, text can go to 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be with us when you get in your car or if you're at home. Take your smart device, play podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.